Howdy y'all, so I just landed in Maldives, and right before leaving I posted a video where I shot everything on an iPhone and then compared that to a red Komodo. And the challenge was, could you tell which was which? Now, I wanted to just take a moment and actually walk you through how I built the iPhone rig, because what's wild is if you look at the comments on different social media platforms or Inside Story First, a lot of people really can't tell the difference. And that really goes to show what this camera, what it can create today. So, I want to show you a couple of the key things. There's really 5 elements that you can build for under $500 that can allow you to create visuals that, some people can't tell the difference between a Komodo X and a lens on the Komodo that is worth more than this entire setup. So, first of all, why is the iPhone 15 Pro so effective at really powerful video? A big part of that is that it now allows for ProRes. So you're going to get a raw format, which means you're going to get more dynamic range and much more ability to color it in post. But to really unleash that, what you want to start with is an SSD. And so this is just a super small Samsung super light SSD that we want to use with the iPhone. But on top of that, you want to then pair that with something that's going to hold it. And I personally love this SmallRig. And this is just a little, come on, get focus there, Sony. This is just a SmallRig SSD holder. And all it does is it slides open and we can just slot the SSD in here. Nice and easy. Boom. So that's going to slide in, but what's really cool is here, it actually has a clamp for the cable, so that when you're, running it on your camera, you don't have to worry about the cable falling out. Now, why is this so important? It's not just about more storage. It's actually that you can get to editing right away, and it's quite slow to transfer all your ProRes footage off your phone and then to, into a laptop to edit. Whereas this, I can plug this into DaVinci, I can start editing right away. Now, how the heck are we going to get this on our iPhone and keep it nice and small? That's where a cage comes in. And so I'm actually just using this Freewell, nice and affordable, just a Freewell cage that I got on Amazon. And there's a whole bunch of different options. I like this because it was affordable. I didn't know how often I was going to use it, and it's got a lot of different accessories. And so what we're going to do is just pop the phone inside of this Freewell cage, and it's going to hold that, and you're going to see that it's got all of these different mounting points. And so I'm just going to take this cage, and I'm going to mount the SSD right on top. And so see how that slides on. I can just tighten that in, and then there you go. That is the SSD mounted on the cage. And one more thing that's super handy is then you can buy these handles, which are really not much. And I'm just going to put that right here. You can put these in different places, depending on if you're shooting horizontal or vertical. Honestly, the handle goes a long way, whether you shoot horizontal or vertical. But I'm just going to throw this on just so you can kind of see how quickly you can build this rig. And so we just screw that in. And it does have another quick shoe mount on the top. It also has a quick release trigger if you want. But ooh, look at that. It's already starting to come together. Okay, so before we dive into throwing the camera into the cage, another huge thing is you want to get off the native phone app, and I recommend the Blackmagic app. Now, this is a camera app that is totally free to use. And so here it is. And it is actually very easy to learn, but the big thing here is it's actually going to give you manual control. You can see I get a waveform here. I can control my ISO, my aperture, my white balance. I can set my different audio settings, different ProRes codecs, everything else. And so this is going to be great to be able to lock in things like your shutter speed, everything else, and really get the look you want. And so all we're going to do is take this handy dandy cage, open this up, boom, and then the phone just pops in, and then it just closes and clamps in. Now, what you're going to notice right away when you start using this is you often have too much light coming in towards these lenses, which gives you a high shutter look, which can really look quite video-ish. So one of the big things you want to add right away then is just an ND filter. And I've got a variable ND filter, and it screws on right here. And that's going to let me use all 3 of my lenses, the wide, the tight, and the regular lens. And now I can, boom, dial in my exposure. This right here is really the bare bones of what you would need to make a pretty darn solid cinema rig just shooting in ProRes right to the SSD. I have to attach a cable to the bottom of the phone, but I assume you know how to do that. Now, one more step, if you really want to get fancy, is what's cool about this setup from Freewell and some of the other ones as well, is I can pop this plate off. You can see I just got some lines here. I can pop that off, and this whole plate will come off, and then what I can do is replace it. I just attach this other plate. Now this plate is going to allow me to attach lenses. And so the two that I'd really recommend for you, so the first one is this macro, and the macro is going to let you get some wild shots that you wouldn't think are possible with an iPhone, and because it gets so close, you're going to get a very shallow depth of field. So the macro goes on here. All you do is screw it on. I always forget to take the back cap off. Apparently, if you don't take your lens caps off, they don't really mount all that well. And so, I can't tell you how many times I do that. Then all we do is screw this sucker on, and that is ready to go. Now, what often happens with macro lenses and phones is that it's challenged to get focus because they're so close, and that's not what your phone's made for, which is where the Blackmagic app comes in. So I can actually come in here and actually change to I can take it off autofocus, and I can actually control the focus. Now this is not going to focus because this is a macro lens, but I can actually dial in and rack focus here if I wanted to. So super powerful. Now the one other lens that I really love, and there's a couple that are quite nice, but the other one is this 60 Telephoto. Now that might be a little confusing because your iPhone naturally has a longer lens on it, but the native lens or the main lens has got a wider aperture. And so if you use a larger piece of glass on that main lens, you're going to get a wider aperture, and then you're just going to get better optics overall. Now when I use this longer lens, what I'm able to do is get a shallower depth of field because a longer focal length is going to help me get a little bit shallower depth of field. Now you are going to get the more compressed nature of a longer lens, which might not be ideal for what you're doing, but it does let you start to get a shallower depth of field with this one little setup. And so what is great though is this little setup is very, very mobile, very quick to set up. I can record for hours on this thing in ProRes log, and really, if you watch the video, it's hard to tell the difference. It's really quite impressive. Now, the last thing I want to show you here is inside the Blackmagic app, they have motion options. And so this is where you can turn the stabilization that the phone has off, but more than that, you can actually go to cinematic. And cinematic is what I think a lot of you are going to like. And what it does is it kind of just gently gives it a motion. And so it kind of takes the edge off, as opposed to, you can notice the normal Apple one can be a little jittery sometimes and it'll overcorrect. And if you turn it off, it might be a little too shaky. But I find this for a subtle little like move is actually quite awesome. Now I can pop this handle off, I can pop the handle over to the side, I can pop the SSD up to the top, I can do all kinds of configurations really quite quickly to get a lot out of this. But this whole thing, I mean, I'm pretty sure this is under $500. The cage was not much, the SSD was $100. I think you got all 5 of these pieces for under $500. Set it up in minutes and take a look at the clip. It is hard to tell the difference between some of the red Komodo X with a $25,000 or so 28-70 Canon lens. It has a an f2, all compared to this whole setup. But it always comes back to how do you operate it? And so when you can really set this up right, and you can leverage the manual settings and learn to see light well, and then really dial in your white balance, everything else, and shoot in an uncompressed format like log, it's wild what you're actually able to do in post and how much you can push it and how hard it is to tell the difference. So I hope you've liked this little walkthrough. I'm going to take this sucker out for some more tests while I'm here in Maldives, see just what I can create, because, man, it is fun being able to just create with something that is so darn small, yet so powerful. So I hope this has helped, and I hope some of you join me in really pushing what you can do with a smartphone.